Middle East Council on Global Affairs, and he joins us from the US Capitol. Omar, I'm going to come back to that attack from Israel in Qatar in just a moment and ask you, how much of an effect that had. But first of all, just your initial reaction to today's developments.
First of all, thank you for having me. I mean, it's a fateful moment indeed. I think it brings a tremendous amount of relief to the population there. We've seen the coverage, the footage of elated people on the ground, just so happy, I think, to be alive, and for this torment, this torture, this terror that Israel has put them through for the past 2 years to potentially be coming to an end. And we know that, and you just showed all the different potential ceasefire agreements or ceasefires that were made that were ultimately broken. So I think people know in their hearts that this could possibly happen again. But this looks like it has the potential to actually stick this time around, and I think that is great for everybody, and especially for those people on the ground in Gaza who have suffered so much over the past 2 years.
And what do you think the turning point was for the United States? Because it had tolerated Israeli attacks on Hamas leaders in Lebanon and also in Iran. But when Israel struck Qatar in Doha in an attempt to take out further Hamas leaders, it did appear that changed something in President Trump's attitude towards Benjamin Netanyahu.
Yeah, I think that was strangely pivotal in this development that we've seen. And I think for Trump, the embarrassment that came out of that and the angered response from U.S. allies throughout the region, but especially those in the Gulf and the GCC countries and leaders who he seems to value very highly, and the U.S. has strong strategic interest there. He, I think, has personal interest there. And so when those came under threat as a result of that attack on Qatar, that he's implicated in, and the United States was implicated in, I think that kind of offered both a galvanizing moment for those Arab states, for those Gulf states to start pressing Trump and pushing back on him and making demands, and offer them, a certain amount of leverage. They have leverage, but I think it changed something in their own perspective on their use of leverage and what they needed to demand from the Americans. And I think it put Trump in a very uncomfortable position, and he became much more willing to listen to that. And I think they got him to the table. They made demands that a ceasefire in Gaza be taken seriously by Donald Trump. And then we saw that meeting on the sidelines of the United Nations between 8 Arab and Muslim countries and the American team, including Trump and his special envoy, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that was definitely a turning point here. And once that happened, I think Trump, has changed his tune and moved away from his original position, which was backing the Israelis and this nonsensical idea of a Riviera and the ethnic cleansing of Gaza.
Well, indeed. And it also elicited an apology from the Israeli Prime Minister to Qatar, no doubt prompted by Donald Trump. Do you think that the unwavering support, the unconditional support that the United States has given to Israel is for the moment over?
I would not go that far. And let's just add also that Trump, offered or signed an executive order enhancing Qatar's security umbrella. So that was another big move. So we can see, the gravity of what that moment meant and that attack meant for both Qatar, the Gulf, and Donald Trump in the United States. But moving back to your question, I don't think we've seen the unwavering support break, really. But definitely Trump, I think, has had a little bit fed up with Netanyahu, wants to end this thing, wants to win the Peace Prize. I know it's becoming a little bit of a cliche, but they're, I think, announcing it either Friday or next week. And he, came in right under the line and potentially getting a ceasefire, so that might raise his chances. So I think there are a number of things that are motivating Donald Trump to put pressure on Netanyahu this time around, in which he hasn't done it in the past. But the devil is in the details here. We have a negotiation or an agreement that was made on simply the first phase. And that is the release of hostages and Palestinian hostages and the entry of aid and the stopping of the bombs for the moment. But once those hostages are given up, they can never be taken back. by Hamas. That was one of the sticking points for them, that there is no guarantee that Israel will live up to it, and that Trump and the United States will hold them to account to live up to the terms of the agreement. And so that's where we'll see what's going to happen here. But I think there is momentum and force behind this agreement like there wasn't in the past. And I think, again, you have a united front in support of a ceasefire from the Middle Eastern side, from Turkey and Qatar and Egypt and the Saudis and the rest who are close to Trump, and he actually respects them, and they're pushing hard and united in doing so. And I think that has been a dramatic change.
Yeah, and that's exactly why Hamas wanted those guarantees from the US about a permanent end to the war, and perhaps they got some of those guarantees in these negotiations. This first step, of course, is a positive first step. It guarantees a certain number of points, but the thornier issues, the more difficult obstacles of Hamas disarmament and the future governance of Gaza, we haven't had any detail on those. How difficult do you think those will be to find agreement upon?
I think it's going to be major. I mean, those have been the sticking points from the very beginning. The terms of the Israeli military withdrawal. We had heard in terms of the agreement that was the 20-point proposal or 21-point proposal that was initially negotiated between those countries and Donald Trump in New York, looked quite a bit different from the one that was announced by Trump and Netanyahu in Washington, D.C. And a lot of that came to the nature of Israel's withdrawal. Whether it was a full withdrawal, a permanent withdrawal, whether Israel was going to stay militarily there. And the agreement that they had announced was very much in Israel's favor. And so how that's going to be negotiated, especially with the hostages gone. I agree with your previous guest. The hostages really actually didn't mean all that much, especially to this Israeli government who kind of pushed them aside. But at the same time, it was something that Hamas had in its hand and would no longer have 72 hours from the signing of this agreement. So that's one of them. The other is the future of Palestinian governance in Gaza. Obviously, the sides are very far apart on that, and Hamas's disarmament and its future, and whether it can stay as an organization within the Gaza Strip indefinitely, and we don't know because they're very far apart on that. So these terms will be negotiated. Again, I think what you have that's different from the past is a united front in support of a more favorable position for the Palestinians than was existing previously in the rounds of negotiations. You had a facilitation by Egypt and Qatar, but I don't know how forceful they were in backing and trying to put pressure on the United States to just be reasonable on these terms of this agreement and not just back whatever Israel wanted.
Omar, thanks for joining us. We appreciate you joining us here on TRT World. Omar Rahman there, Middle East Council, joining us on TRT World.
Thanks for having me.